Hello and welcome into episode 119 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I am your host, Mark Harris, and we've got some basketball to talk about, not directly about ASU, but it does indirectly relate to ASU. Some spring football stuff, some hockey stuff, some baseball, some women's basketball. So a little bit of everything. Going to keep it shorter show this time, just like last time. Please like and subscribe, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. And remember to follow the College Huddle Podcast Network. All right, so I'm starting with March Madness. I'm recording this on Thursday night. This will be released on Friday, the 21st, midday during the second full day of the first round. Obviously, ASU is not in the tournament. No surprise there. But there are some things that kind of relate to ASU. And the first one is Texas firing head coach Rodney Perry. Now, the reason I bring this up, you might think, Mark, what does Texas firing Rodney Perry have anything to do with ASU? Well, I will tell you. Many ASU fans who defended Bobby Hurley had one of their main arguments was, oh, well, who are you going to hire? ASU is a bad job. And this is an argument I have done before. Taking a while for it to get on the screen there, but for the audio audience, there we go. Texas head coach Rodney Terry to be fired after 2025 NCAA tournament loss to Xavier. They lost in the first four, so he's already ready to be an ASU head coach. He already knows the lay of the land around Dayton, Ohio. But the reason I bring up Rodney Terry and how it relates to ASU is that this would be a great potential hire. Like if Bobby Hurley does leave, because he is under a lame duck situation, right? And again, this is like Hurley isn't going to leave this offseason. If he does leave, it will be after next season, more than likely. Like I think he would have already left and taken a job at this point. And it looks like he's still, as I mentioned in last episode, it looks like he's still in the mix for Koa Pete. But I bring up Rodney Terry, to illustrate that there are coaches out there that you could potentially replace Hurley with. And I'm not even maybe Rodney Terry wouldn't even want to coach ASU, but I think that and again, it's not like this is the next John Wooden or something. They went 19-16. They did have an Elite Eight appearance, and he made the tournament 3 times. So he did have a pretty successful overall tenure at Texas, and it's not like he had some perfect like Texas probably shouldn't be firing him, but it's not like he's some elite coach, but he was solid, right? He was solid, and he would be a perfectly fine replacement for Bobby Hurley. So I just don't like this idea of, oh, if you get rid of Bobby Hurley, then what are you going to do? As if we're holding on to some excellent era when haven't even won 14 games each of the last 2 years. That's something that bothers me. And there are other guys out there, right? There's just great Sorry, I have to interject here. Just amazing glasses on Rodney Terry. I mean, elite glasses. I don't wear glasses, but if I did, I would be wearing those circular frames that Mr. Terry has on. So, and Rodney Terry, I looked it up. He's been a coach before. He's been a coach before. He's been a coach at Fresno State before. Took them to the tournament in the mid 2010s. Had a 3-year stint at UTEP that didn't go as well, but he's done the job before. He's competent, and so if ASU were to ever move on or if Hurley were to leave, I just don't think that like there's no other options besides Hurley, because that's an argument that you hear quite a bit from the Hurley defenders. So, I think it looks like we're staying with Hurley for another year, right? But I just don't think that. I think that Terry represents that there are a lot of coaches out there who could potentially come in and maybe not even do a great job. I'm not saying that Rodney Terry would come into ASU and be a guaranteed slam dunk hire, but I think he would be a competent replacement and someone who I think if ASU had fired Bobby Hurley after this year, and then maybe they're waiting out the coaching market, whatever, and they see that Rodney Terry was available, I think he would be a great replacement, especially since he's coached in the Big 12 before, too, 2 years. So that's just kind of, it's not that I even like am like, oh, we need to fire Hurley right now to get Terry. It's more so like there are coaches out there who can replace Hurley when that day comes. So I saw that, Iona fired Tobin Anderson, and he was the head coach of Fairleigh Dickinson, the Fairleigh Dickinson team that beat Purdue a few years ago in a 16-1 upset. You could bring him in. Sure, he probably wouldn't be quite as much of a natural fit because he's a Northeast guy, but coaching is coaching. You get a few transfers in, and all of a sudden, you're in good shape. You could hire the guy from UC San Diego, right? You could hire the guy from McNeese, but Will Wade is already on the way to NC State. But my point is there's coaching options out there. So it doesn't look like it's going to happen this offseason in terms of replacing Hurley. And it may happen years down the road because, like, as I mentioned in episode 118 last week, there is a very realistic chance that Hurley reels in Koa Pete, and with Koa Pete in the fold, then Jaden Quainton stays, potentially Josan Sannon stays, Austin Nunez returns, Amir Ali comes back, and you have the core of like a pretty good, solid team. So this could be, a conversation that's had years down the road, but I just don't like the mindset among some ASU fans that, oh, we have to hold on to Hurley because we don't know what's out there, and we're a bad job, which I do agree that ASU is a bad job for Power 4 standards. The arena's awful. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. So that's my thought on that. And then another thing, wanted to check up on a former Sun Devil. Here we go. Let's switch it over. Jemiah Neal, who was at ASU for 3 years, he scored 29 points on Thursday against Louisville in Creighton's big win. You know what? It's not sharing that right now, but it was another example of a Sun Devil shining in March, but not, or a former Sun Devil shining in March, but not for ASU. And I saw a tweet from an ASU fan. They were said, Remy Martin wins a national championship with Kansas. DJ Horn last year is on a Final Four team in NC State. Now Jemiah Neal, and potentially they could lose in the next round to Auburn, and that's the end of it. But Jemiah Neal has a great game for, I almost called him Omaha, for Creighton in a win. And it's one thing for Jaden Daniels to leave a program that is in complete dumpster fire mode and succeed elsewhere. In fact, it's one thing for all the guys on the ASU football team that left last year, those being Jalen Conyers, BJ Green, Elijah Badger, those guys left a program that they were from the old staff, and they left after 1 year, a bad year. So even then, it's a little different, but it just stinks to have a guy like. And as I say this, like, it's not even about like one person. Like, I don't blame Jemiah Neal at all for leaving. Like, he made the right choice, clearly. Uh, it's a trend, and it's not like the ASU men's basketball program isn't in disarray like the football program was at the end of the Herm Edwards era. It's just bad. You know, that's that's the problem. It's not like guys are leaving because there's chaos. No, there's not chaos. Or, maybe there's chaos in an individual game or whatever, but it's not chaotic. It's just not very good. And the same thing with DJ Horn. Remy Martin is a little bit of a different example because he had been at ASU for 4 years, graduate transfer. So it's a little bit of a different case, but when you add them all up, it's guys succeeding elsewhere after they leave ASU. And I saw another thing on X that like someone was like, "Oh, well, ASU's transfers in 2023 helped them beat Nevada and the Cambridge brothers and Warren Washington." It's like, okay, well, that was a first 4 game. All these other guys are like advancing in the NCAA tournament, and we're bragging about a first 4 game. But okay, so it's just, I don't know. I guess this is all downstream of the decision to keep Bobby Hurley, and I understand why they did it, but I just think that if the Koa Pete recruitment can't be sealed up, and ASU was unable to walk that tightrope and keep everything together, then it's just going to be a year, just a wasted year, and a year that will feel kind of similar to the 2022 football season, where you should have just got rid of Herm Edwards earlier, but you didn't. You decided to bring him back, and it was just a wasted season. Last year, the 2023 football season was bad. I wouldn't consider it a wasted season just because it was the first year under a new coach. You're completely shifting everything around. There were some close games in there too, but that's anyway. But yeah, so it just kind of stinks watching these March Madness games and knowing, like, I'm watching some of these teams and I'm just like, okay, like are these teams like significantly better than ASU? No. And it's because ASU just underperformed this year. And some of it was due to injuries, but some of it wasn't. And so it's just frustrating. And like maybe ASU would have gotten blown out. I watched the Georgia Gonzaga game. If ASU played Georgia, like, what would have happened? I don't know. It probably just depended on when they met up with them. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. It's just, I guess to wrap up the basketball stuff, it's just, if and when ASU ever does move on from Bobby Hurley, there will be competent candidates out there. And I mean, hopefully that's way down the road, because you connect the dots, and it seems like there's a realistic scenario where they land Koa Pete, and then the Hurley era becomes a lot different if Koa Pete and Quaintance lead ASU back to the tournament, and then you're with Hurley for a few more years after that. So it's a weird, just weird situation. So we'll see what the coming weeks entail, and what the basketball transfer portal looks like after the season wraps up in 2 weeks. But just wanted to kind of touch on those college basketball March Madness related things and how they relate to ASU. All right, got some football stuff to talk about. Spring football is around the corner. Before I focus too much on spring football, ASU players participated in the Big 12 Pro Day. And, Leaf Fautanu got some good pub. DeCarlos Brooks really showed out. He had like a 40-inch vertical, 4.6 40. I believe he had a 10-foot, 10-inch broad jump. So I don't know how much that's really going to matter in terms of like him making a camp, but he made the most of his opportunity in the pro day. And maybe it's, he didn't get as much run as I expected this past season. So maybe it's just fresh legs, but good for him for kind of cashing in on that last chance there. And it's cool that the Big 12 has this opportunity too for these guys. So Leaf Fautanu got some recognition. DeCarlos Brooks showed out. Caleb McCullough was there. Emmett Boley, Jeff Clark, Xavier Raphael, Xavier Guillory did some good stuff. And I also have to point out Melquan Stovall. He runs a 4.44 40. That's 4 seconds and 4.44 seconds, 40-yard dash. And I was just impressed with that. That was a lot quicker of a time than I expected. No disrespect to Mr. Stovall, who's getting like 2 degrees from ASU. I mean, I just shout out to him for, I don't know, does he sleep? Like, you get 2 degrees, you're on the football team, all the extra stuff that comes with it. Just really, really making the most out of his college experience, like wringing the towel dry of every last drop. So, but I tweeted and Stovall retweeted me. Thank you, Mr. Stovall. I don't know why I'm calling him Mr. Stovall, Melquan Stovall. That his pretty fast 40 time. Like, he ran a faster 40 time than many of the wide receivers who got invited to the combine. So that's a really good sign. And the fact that this is one thing that ASU, I don't want to say fans took for granted, but when you have a rock solid, steady punt returner who doesn't ever drop the ball, never muffs a punt, that is so valuable. That is literally one muffed punt can. Last year, if he had muffed a punt in the UCF game, that would have completely changed ASU season. If he had muffed a punt in the Kansas game, completely changes ASU season. So it's so it's such a reliable thing. And in the NFL, a lot of times these coaches aren't looking for the next Devin Hester or Josh Cribbs was a kickoff returner for the most part, but they're not necessarily looking for like a home run hitter to flip the field. They just want someone who they know is going to catch the ball, and maybe they pick up 10 yards on the return or whatever. But I think that those two things, because his receiving stats, like, I don't even know if he got to 300 yards receiving. He didn't have a touchdown this year. So, like, those aren't going to pop off the page. But when you have a clocked 4.44 say that a million times, 4.44 seconds 40, and a sterling record of punt returning and just catching the punts and not muffing them, then that's going to put you in pretty good shape to make the back end of an NFL roster. At least be a guy that sticks around on the practice squad, maybe gets called up for a game every once in a while. So good for Melquan, good for the rest of the guys at the Big 12 Combine. And hopefully, I don't know if it's probably, in terms of getting drafted, it's obviously Scadaboo. And I mean, Maurice Jones-Drew had him as the 3rd best running back. Like, I think there's a good chance Scadaboo goes in the 2nd round. So that's a great sign to see. The absolute best case scenarios, Leaf Fautanu and Shamari Simmons also get drafted. We'll see. I feel like one of those two guys will get drafted. And then that would give ASU 2 total draft picks. So good for those guys for making the most of their opportunity. And again, good for the Big 12 for offering that to showcase some of the less heralded guys there. On to spring football. There's nothing too much like to add. I think if you're an ASU fan, you kind of understand that like pretty much everyone's coming back, right? Sure, you're Jeff Clark, and there's some defensive guys that, or maybe defensive rotational players / starters that aren't coming back. Obviously, Lee Fautanu, you got to replace him at center. Scadaboo, everyone knows that you got to replace Scadaboo. But every other player is coming back, and you got to replace the 2 wide receivers, which I think they did pretty well in the portal with Jalen Moss, Jaron Hamilton, and Noble Johnson, along with some of the younger guys on the roster. So it's weird. Like, there are definitely some questions, but they're very like, there aren't like a whole bunch of like, oh, who's going to play here? Who's going to play here? It's like, we kind of know how it's going to shake out. It's more of like, how does it come together in spring? How does the offensive line improve? They bring back 4 or 5 starters. You add in Jalen Clem from last year, and I listened to one of his interviews from last week in a media session. Man, I mean, his issues were pretty serious, and it's a good thing that ASU had the depth to not have to rely on him, and that it just in the sense that like he was out for the count last year. So good to see him back with the opportunity to play, and then bringing in the big offensive lineman from Texas State, Jameto Ojigbo. He'll be fighting for a spot on the line, and it'll be interesting how that plays out with Ben Coleman shifting over to center. You'll probably keep the whole right side of the line intact with Kyle Scott and Max Iannachor. And then will it be Josh Atkins at left tackle? Will it be Ojigbo? Will it be Clem? And then how does the left side of the line stack up? So there's that. And then, I mean, obviously just the continuing growth of Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson together. We all know they, connected for 1,100 yards and like 11 touchdowns last year. Just had a mind meld. It felt like and I mean, that can be such a weapon for ASU this year, because it's not just that like these guys are like, oh, they're good friends and they have a great connection and they live together. If you're watching ASU football this upcoming fall, it's going to be like did you know that Russell Wilson played baseball? Did you know that Matt Stafford and Clayton Kershaw went to the same high school? It'll be like that type of factoid where, did you know that Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson lived together in the same apartment building or whatever, same house or whatever? Like, that's going to be a thing that's brought up. But that connection, plus the fact that these 2 dudes are talented in their own rights, right? These are 2 future NFL players. I'm not going to, go with, the first round picks. No. Let's just say future NFL players, right? That's what's really going to be the key for this team. And I don't think Dillingham is going to completely change up the offense, right? Like, sure, I'm sure they will throw more in 2025 than they did last year, and some of that's just because Levitt will be older and a year of experience under his belt, but they're still going to run the ball a ton, and they have plenty of running backs to choose from, and so it's just the passing game will just be even better coupled with a strong running game. And speaking of that running game, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if it becomes a running back by committee or if one player really emerges. At this time last year, we were thinking, it's going to be a committee. Scadaboo will lead the way, but it's a committee. And then at the end of the year, it's like, oh yeah, it's Scadaboo. Like, he's the guy. If we have another player who is as good as Scadaboo, then sign me up for the bell cow, man. Like, if that's Kanye Udo, if that's Jason Brown, if that's Rayleigh Brown, if that's Alton McCaskill, if that's Kyson Brown, like, That's great. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it'll be a little bit more varied. And I liked what Kanye Udo said in his media availability last week. There's a focus of we need to match what Scadaboo did. Like the concerns or the outside concerns of how are they going to replace Scadaboo. I like that that's driving the Arizona State players. So really pumped to see what the running back room looks like, and hopefully they can avoid any major injuries. That would be great. And I mean, from what the little we saw of Rayleigh Brown last year, it looked pretty good. He looked fairly explosive. Kyson Brown did a good job as a backup, and then there's some unknowns there, but there are some talented guys. So that will be fun to see. I don't have a ton of thoughts on the defense. I mean, I think the defense needs to get better than it was last year. Not by a lot. I mean, there's room to grow, but it's not like you're starting from a super low spot, right? The reason I don't have a ton of thoughts on the defense is, I mean, they added a few guys in the portal. You bring in Michael Gardner from Oregon, Nyland Green, Kendrick Breedlove. There we go, from Purdue, and those guys should shore up some spots on the defensive end. Boogie Wilson from Wazoo as well. Almost forgot about him. But this is the third year under Brian Ward, that is the biggest thing to me. And second year of Xavier Alford starting, second year of Ghost Rouser starting, third year for Clayton Smith and Prince Dorba on the defensive line, Elijah O'Neal as well, second year for Swanson, second year for Crooks, second year for Keyshawn Elliott. So, like, it's just more growth for these guys together. And if this defense can – I think the defense can be the thing that leads to ASU winning more games in blowout fashion, right? In the first half of the year, the defense was hit or miss, right? The Wyoming game, whatever. Mississippi State game, weird game because they were great in the first half and then couldn't. Then the game changed a little bit and let them back in the game. But my point is, like, as they gelled together as the season went along, they got a lot better. And they started to hold teams to much lower point totals. If that can be kind of the way they play throughout the entire year, then ASU will look a lot better on some of these like advanced metrics, right? Blowing teams out is incredibly important to these advanced metrics. Fans don't like to hear that, but one of the reasons why ASU took so long to climb out of the S&P plus middle ground range is because they won a lot of close games early in the year. And so from an advanced analytics perspective, that doesn't really show you like how much better a team really is than another team. So because I think the offense, like, barring mass injuries, I think the offense is just going to be good, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't really have a lot of concerns about the offense. Maybe if Jordan Tyson gets injured, but that's not really something that worries me. I just think they're going to produce, and especially when you have Levitt's running ability, that's the added extra bonus for them, just to be able to pick up first downs and make explosive plays. So, the defense being able to kind of shut teams down more often and force some stops, that's something that can really help this team, just skyrocket and just gives them much more margin for error. So it'll be interesting to see how all that gels, and then adding in the addition of the kicker from Eastern Michigan, Jesus Gomez. Look, heading into spring ball, like, this is a pretty, I don't want to say complete team, because like when you compare like ASU's roster to like a Texas or Penn State or a Georgia or whomever, like, I'm sure there are areas where those other teams are better than ASU, but like this team just feels pretty complete. So it's great to see, and I I'm just excited for just really excited for this next year. There's just so much that can happen, and there is a little bit of stress going into a year of ASU football with legitimate expectations. The last time of that would have been 2015, and that 2015 season did not end well at all. So hopefully not a repeat of that, but this team feels a lot more solid than that one. So yeah, good spot for football to be in. A team that's not totally complete, but that is having some success, is Arizona State baseball. The Sun Devils are 14-7 following a series win at TCU and then a Tuesday night loss against USC. Weird. Wow. So game one, they lose 3-2 in Fort Worth. Pitching is good. Bats don't show up. It's kind of a loss that I was kind of okay with because ASU's pitching has been, I don't want to say mostly bad, but there have been a lot of games where the pitching hasn't been good enough. So it's kind of like, oh, at least the pitching showed up in that game. Well, the bats showed up in game two. ASU was up 20-0. I think they were at one point up like 23-0. They win 26-9. Just an absolute laugher against TCU. And then they go up big in game three. They're up 12-5 at one point, and they win 12-11. So they do get their first ever Big 12 conference series win. You know, the 12-11 win still counts. It still counts as a win. But I think my diagnosis of this team as just being a better version of the previous Willie Bloomquist teams is proving to be accurate because the bullpen depth does not appear to be great. And winning a game 12-11 when you were up 12-5 entering the ninth inning, and maybe I don't remember if it was 12-5 exactly. Let me look that up. But whew, it feels like with ASU baseball, if you're watching just from your phone or following the game just via Twitter on your phone, then you cannot. Yeah, 12-5. Jeez. I mean, so ASU entered the ninth inning. That's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous college baseball BS in this game. This is a Sunday game if I've ever seen one. And for the non-college baseball fans out there, that's Sunday games. Like you're down to your third worst starting pitcher. You're down to, let me share this. Whoop. There we go. You're down to your third worst starting pitcher. You're down to your worst bullpen arm. So some high scores happen. ASU bats are going well. They score 6 runs in the sixth inning. They're up 7. Yeah. They're up 7-5 entering the ninth inning. ASU scores 5 runs. They go up 12-5. You're thinking, okay, great. This is going to be another blowout win for ASU baseball. This is awesome. Then TCU scores 6 in the bottom of the ninth, but it's not enough. ASU holds on to win 12-11. I'm not going through all the stats. Isaiah Jackson, Brody Briggs had good games. Brandon Compton, this team has guys who can hit. That's very evident. So, it's good to see them winning games. The USC loss isn't great. The old LA schools are getting their revenge because they lose. Well, I guess they split against UCLA. Tuesday loss on the 11th to Arizona wasn't great. But they host Kansas this weekend. I don't know much about Kansas baseball, Let's see what their record is, if it can load. Just stack another series win. If you leave this weekend at 16-8 overall, that would be good, not great, and I'll take that right now. Why did it just link to the Kansas athletic department? Come on. Well, I'm already on the Kansas page right now. Let's see. Let's see what the record is. But yeah, I guess unfortunately that this ASU baseball team just is kind of in the good, not great bin. Oof. Okay, Kansas is pretty good from a record perspective. Haven't played the toughest schedule. I see Tarleton State, 4 games against Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, Omaha, which they lost to Milwaukee. They also lost to Minnesota. They lose 6-10, then win 29-1. What a weird series. They lose to U of A 5-0 on Tuesday. So their 17-4 record is a little inflated. But this will be a good test for ASU. And I mean, if they can get a sweep, that would shut me up. Go to 17-7. That's a good place for them to be. So just keep stacking series wins. I prefer that it looks better than it did on Sunday, but got to get these wins any way you can, especially at the end of the year. They all add up. So keep chugging along, ASU baseball. All right, I'm going to flip over to ASU women's basketball. Haven't touched on them a lot this year because they've been bad. Obviously, we know they fired former head coach Natasha Adair. Their 2 best players, Brown and Skinner, have since entered the transfer portal. But it looks like ASU women's basketball has zeroed in on a replacement, that being GCU head coach Molly Miller. According to Devils in Detail, ASU women's basketball, it seems like they have there we go. Seems like it seems like this is, coming together. And the reason why I'm not being too direct with my language on this is because, this isn't a done deal. Molly Miller has been in the mix for the Arkansas job. I believe she turned down the Missouri job. So she is a hot candidate on the market. But according to Devils in Detail, it looks like she's coming to Tempe from Phoenix, just a 20-minute drive. So this is from David Howman. Report: Arizona State closing in on new women's basketball coach. It sounds like Graham Rossini has landed one of the most coveted candidates on the market. No mention of Molly Miller's name. But according to multiple sources, GCU head coach Molly Miller will be the next women's basketball coach in Tempe. We'll see if that ends up being true. She has a 180-17 record and 4 consecutive Sweet 16. Oh, wait. Okay, let me read this. The Missouri native started at Drury University and later began her coaching career there, rising the ranks to head coach. Okay, so when she was at Drury University, she went 180-17 and made 4 D2 Sweet 16. So this is good. This means that she's just one of those coaches that has won everywhere she's been, right? I've talked about this, pre-hiring of Kenny Dillingham, that ASU should just hire, or maybe I didn't, but like there's a thought out there with the Lance Leipold and the Kalen DeBoers of just hire the coach that's dominated at the lower levels and put him at the highest level and see how it goes. This same line of thinking could apply to Molly Miller. Howman then writes, Miller then moved out to Arizona to coach the Antelopes. Moving up to Division I after finishing 18-7 her first year, Miller has topped 20 wins in every season since. And this year's squad finished the regular season 29-2. So she has a chance to win a tournament game this weekend for GCU against Baylor. And I'll say this, like, I don't know how Molly Miller would potentially do as the head coach of ASU women's basketball, but I do know that this would probably be the best move of Rossini's tenure so far, more than anything from football, because a lot of that stuff was in place before he really got there. And some of the things he's done for football is just kind of re-engage with boosters. And obviously that's incredibly important with NIL and all that. But in terms of hiring a coach, right, bringing in Molly Miller would be a fantastic feather in his cap. So I hope they can get this done. When I was in college, ASU women's basketball, like, there were some years it felt like they were equal in terms of relevance to the men's team, and some of that was because the men's team wasn't that good. But like, they made the Elite Eight when I was in college, and Charlie Turner Thorne had that program rolling. So if this can kind of be, if her just wins and losses record can translate over to ASU, then that would just be a great thing for ASU, and it would also just be a great move by Graham Rossini as well. So that's just there was not a lot of fans, but there were some fans out there that were like, hey, like, you should have gotten rid of Hurley, like, bringing him back, even if, again, the Koa Pete stuff is still, we don't know if that's going to happen. But on the first reaction of bringing Bobby Hurley back, like, a lot of fans were not happy about that. I think bringing in Molly Miller would quell some of those concerns. So that is good. I haven't talked about hockey yet. Not going to bring up the hockey on my laptop because it always crashes, but I will mention that later this afternoon at 2 p.m. Arizona time, ASU plays Denver in St. Paul, Minnesota on CBS Sports Network for the first round, or the first game of their second round series in the NCHC tournament. ASU pretty much needs to win this series to feel good about getting into the NCAA tournament. And it's annoying. I've said it so many times, but it's annoying that, like, this is the year the NCHC struggles and ASU has to make some hay in the postseason to make up for it. But that's where they're at, and it's they've beaten Denver 3 out of 4 times they've played the Pioneers this year. It's going to be a challenge to continue that, just based on how ASU played against Minnesota Duluth. Their defense wasn't particularly great in that series. I mean, obviously, they won, the 2 games, and Ryan Kerwin had that excellent walk-off goal, and it was a great atmosphere in Mullet Arena over this past weekend. But they're going to have to level up their play in St. Paul. So it'll be interesting to watch that. I'm glad those games are on CBS Sports Network. It'll definitely get lost in the shuffle of March Madness, but I'll try to make some time to watch that and see how the Sun Devils perform in St. Paul. And if they can win these 2 games, then you're feeling really good about. I mean, for one, that you win 2 games, then you're on to the NCHC tournament finals against either Western Michigan or North Dakota, and even to get to that point is awesome. But secondarily, winning those 2 games makes you feel a lot better about getting into the NCAA tournament for ASU hockey. So, good place for them to be. And, this is an opportunity. So, they haven't, this is where they can make up for their early season stumbles. So go ASU hockey, get it done in the state of hockey. That, for those of you who don't know, that's what Minnesota calls itself. It's the state of hockey. I'm sure people from outside of Minnesota, from other hockey states, don't love that. But as someone who lived in Minnesota for a year, I can see why they call themselves the state of hockey. It's a big deal, and I believe they have like the biggest high school hockey tournament, like in the country. Maybe Massachusetts is bigger or something, but I think it's Minnesota that really goes all out with it. So it's really part of the culture there, and it would be kind of cool. It would even raise ASU hockey's national brand even more so to really make some hay in the NCHC tournament, because there's going to be a good amount of neutral observers there seeing the Sun Devils perform. So that would be a big deal for them to do that. I do want to touch on some of the awards that ASU hockey won. ASU graduate forward Artem Schlain made first team all conference. And then ASU defenseman Ty Murchison wins defensive defenseman of the year. And I think that they must give out like an offensive defenseman award. So good for them. And, let's do it, Sun Devils. Let's do it. It would be such a great cap to end this season with a berth to the NCAA tournament. I think they can do it. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. And as always, go Sun Devils.